Okay, Hamburger train. So in this video I'm going to be sticking to the album pork soda version of the track, discussing differences with how it's typically done live where appropriate. So Les plays this one on his 6-string fretted, and this song essentially consists of 3 main riffs, the third sort of being a variation of the first one, but 2 of those riffs you should be able to play on a 5-string perfectly fine without a problem, and the third of those can still be played on a 5-string. It's just there's a little more, it's a bit harder, there's a little more jumping around on the neck with that. So could you play these riffs on a 4th string? I suppose you could if you put it in drop D tuning, and drop D giving you access to B3 here. The lowest note we're going to go with these riffs is B4 or E flat, and that's during the part. However, a few of the fills on this track, well, pork soda version anyway, I think really demand a 6-string, especially when we go up pretty high here with some strumming at like GC20 and 21. Alright, let's get into the main riffs. You are the male individual from the beef patty sandwich locomotive, correct? Okay, let's slow that down. Okay, so we're going to start with a double muted slap on the B string, and then hit B9. Please ignore the god-awful fret buzz. Then we're going to use our middle and ring fingers, these 2 ones here, to do a hammer-on to 10. Move up a fret and do the same thing. So after the slap at 10, and then use your fingers to do a hammer-on at 11. So that note that you're hammering onto, the 10, and then the 11, how do I explain this? It's kind of farty sounding, and this song just overall has a lot of kind of muted fartiness to it. It's not like it's semi-muted. It's not like a super clear, pronounced note, but it's also not like a totally muted, like, ghost note. I think it would be a bit easier to demonstrate this if I switch to the E string down here. Right, so it's not super clear and pronounced, right? So it's not like... But it's also not entirely muted, so to mute this with my left hand, it's somewhere in between, and that sort of semi-muted fartiness can be achieved by, first of all, playing on the B string, and by using, like, 2 fingers when doing that hammer-on. But the notes that you are slapping, so the 9 and the 10, those aren't as farty. Try to nail those and hit those clearly. It's the hammer-on afterward that's a bit more muted. So to say one final thing about this, when playing this, I wouldn't really be thinking like, okay, slap, hit the 10, slap, hit the 11. I would just be thinking like slap, bring your fingers down, slap, bring fingers down, if that makes sense. Alright, so next we have a muted slap on the E string, quickly followed by a E10 slap. Okay, so far we have... Alright, so after the... we're going to do another muted E string slap, immediately followed by a left hand tap at B12 with a little slide down after that. So like, so in doing this you got to be kind of hard, kind of aggressive to really hit that B12 with your left hand. And if you're not really satisfied with like the amount of volume you're getting doing that, maybe just slap the note instead of tapping it. So a difference with live versions is that muted note after the is actually not a muted note, it's another E10. So live it sounds more like this. Alright, so next we're going to play everything again up until the so far. Okay, now we're going to finish up the main riff with muted E string slap, and then slap E10, hammer on 12. And that's it for Riff A. Alright, now for Riff B. Okay, to slow that down. Okay, so we're going to start with a double muted slap on the B string, and then a slap on B4, hammer on 5 with 2 fingers using the same technique as before. Maybe not quite that farty, but yeah, played at full speed, the 4 is going to be a little more pronounced than the 5. So do 2 of those hammer-ons, so far. And then we're going to do a muted slap, but it's kind of like getting your hand on the strings there, ready to pop open G. And that's going to be a pretty hard pop, careful not to bust your string. And it's going to be like immediately choked, cut off by your left hand. Okay, so far. Another muted slap on B, another hammer on. Okay, so far. So next we are going to play all of that again, actually, only we're going to end on E string muted slap, 4 hammer on 5, as opposed to the, okay, so the 2 kind of sections of that, and then, okay, so smashed together, it's like, one difference with live versions, specifically later live versions, like I'm thinking of the 2012 3D tour where they played this track a few times, is there the pop is just open C, just not muted at all, just open C. So around the 1 minute mark we are going to enter Riff C, and I'm actually going to go over the live version of Riff C first, because it has the same right hand movements as the Pork Soda version, but live it's like way more consistent. It's like the same chords like every time, whereas on Pork Soda the chords are kind of, they vary quite a bit. So I thought it'd be better just to teach a consistent riff before introducing the variation to it. Okay, and that's gonna go like this. Alright, to slow that down a bit. Okay, so we're going to start off with our from Riff A, and then we're going to do a muted strum downward on the G and C strings, and then we're going to strum up, hitting the bar chord at GC11, and then we're going to strum down again, hitting GC open. Careful not to hit the D string with that. Alright, so far. And then we're going to do the B12 left hand tap thing, just like the from Riff A. And as you're doing that, be sure to kill the open GC ring that's going on from the previous strum. So like so. Up next we are going to do that again, but after the we are going to do muted strum down on G and C, and then strum up, and then hitting the bar chord at 11 again, hammer on to 14. Okay, so on a 5 string that would be muted strum downward on the D and G strings, strum up at DG16, quickly jump down here, and then down strum DG5, and then cut that off as you tap E7, you know, because I'm guessing you don't want to jump up to B12 to do that. Alright, so at 106, I think, is where Riff C is first going to come in with the pork soda version, and it's going to go a little different. It's going to go more like this. Okay, so we're going to start with our usual, and then we are going to do a muted strum downward on G and C. Sometimes it's not so muted, sometimes I can kind of hear the open strings in there a little bit. But anyway, after that down strum, we're going to do an up strum at GC12. Okay, then after that, muted slap somewhere, probably the E string again, to the B12 tap. Okay, for future reference, I'm going to refer to that as a C1, because that's going to show up later. So up next we have, so this is almost exactly like, you know, how I kind of covered it before, only instead of 11 hammer on 14, it's going to be 12 hammer on 14. So instead of like, it's going to be, so at 115, that's going to switch up. Instead of, it's going to be, so, you know, muted strum down, up strum 12, muted strum down again, and then up strum 12 hammer on 14. Alright, so at 119 we're going to start doing this thing here. Alright, so this is going to be very similar to kind of how I explained Riff C live version earlier, only instead of that, it's going to be at 12, so like, and when you're strumming that, put some like emphasis into it, like the strumming here is kind of aggressive sounding. So I'm going to refer to that as C2 later, for later purposes, and that's going to appear a lot more than C1 in the album version of the track. And then instead of doing a or a, we're going to take that down to GC2 and 4 actually. So I'm gonna start just throwing the times on the screen instead of just saying them every time. So we're going to start Riff B again, only we are not going to play the at the end. It's just going to end on the. Okay, so it's going to go kind of like this. Alright, so we're going to head back into Riff A. And where the is, it sounds like to me like instead of it's, whoops, so like GC12 just before the E12. How does he do this so quickly? Magic, I guess. A little bit later with Riff A, not super sure about this, could be my ears playing tricks on me, but instead of starting with the to me it sounds like, so double muted slap and then B9 slap, slide up and then slap B12. So that's gonna kind of sound like this. Alright, so heading back into Riff C, we're going to play C1 a couple times before switching to C2. And it's going to end with every time here, so 12 to 12 hammer on 14. Alright, so back into Riff B, and it's going to, again, just end with the pop rather than the... It's going to be not entirely muted, but more kind of softly played here. And we have a slide sort of thing before keeping that going. So next, back into Riff A, just normal Riff A. Then back into C2 again, and C2 with the ending of... Next we are going to do something a bit new. So it's going to be Riff A, pretty muted, not entirely muted. I mean, later it's going to be extremely muted, like... But yeah, pretty muted, and then we're going to throw in these like in with it. So like muted strum downward, and then when you strum up, we're just going to be lightly hitting C12. Okay, so that's going to go kind of like this. Next we're going to go into Riff B, but this is going to be very pronounced. You can really hear all the notes here. It's really not muted much at all. So we're going to skip a pop in this section, so where you would expect to hear a... we're just going to keep going with a... And then there's a little bit here like... So like double muted slap. And then E4 hammer on 5 3 times, sounds like. Next we're going to go back into Riff A, but we're going to start throwing some open G pops in there. So it's going to go like this. Next, we have some sort of ascending hammer-on thing. So kind of like... Not really sure what notes are being played there, but what I do is E10 to 12, A10 to 12, A12 14, and D12 14, followed by a similar fill of 2 hammer on to 4. So like, followed by a, so our normal Riff A, but after the, very quickly after that, we're going to jump down here to GC2, hammer on, strum, hammer on to 4, and some muted strumming after that. Now we're into Riff B, I'm going to play that pretty muted. and that with 2 strums here, or 4 rather, up here at GC15. Next we're going to return to Riff A played softly with the thrown in there, and we're going to throw in a double E10-12 here. We're going to do that again a bit later, and that's going to take us into this next kind of weird part. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on here, but yeah, we start with this into this kind of walk down, starting at B9 and 10, moving down a fret here, and then this is going to stick around the 5, 6, 7 area on the B string. Mostly 6 and 7 is what I'm hearing. Just kind of going crazy with slapping here. Occasionally sliding up to the 10, 11, 12 area here. So then we're going to do kind of a double muted slap with a C12 pop, and then like a slide down kind of thing. So like into the next part, which unfortunately I have even less idea of what's going on. It is definitely the most confusing part of this song, the like 540 to 610 region. Very all over the place. There's 2 kind of patterns that I think I'm picking up on, which I'll share here, so hopefully those are of help. So one thing I'm sort of picking up on here is like an inversion of Riff A. So it's going to start with like before, but then it's like, so muted slap E12, muted slap E10, like so. I'm kind of hearing that in there. And a second pattern that I think I'm picking up on here, again kind of at a loss for what's going on here, is some chord strums, just our bar chords, you know, like very farty sounding chord strums at that. And how I think that's being achieved is down strum with GC open, and then very quickly strum up with a bar chord to like choke that off. So kind of like, and as to the chords that I'm hearing here, 2, 4, 5-ish maybe, not so sure about that one, 9, 10, 12, then up here to 20, because we're going to start doing some higher strumming here. Up next we have some strumming at the GC 20, 21 area. So what I was strumming was a repeated pattern, but in the track it's not really a pattern as far as I can tell. It's like pretty random. But yeah, there is some sliding with that, so. Man, it's just, oh man, my finger's bleeding now. So yeah, maybe don't practice that bit too much, at least not in the way that I was. Unless you want the side of your ring finger completely lacerated. But anyway, you might have noticed some kind of sliding I was doing with that strumming. Sliding up to and down from 20. So then we're going to do some strumming, bringing our bar chord shape down. I think there might be a couple of open strums in there during that part, but anyway. And then onto the, so that's B2, 3, 4, 5, and then E, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now we're going to play Riff A extremely muted with your right arm, muting all the strings here like so. And then 2 slaps downward starting at B11 into Riff B. Just to mention, I guess, in 90s live performances of this, something he'll do is like play the kind of pattern of Riff A, but down here towards like the 4 or 5 Riff B area. So like, and then start throwing in this GC4, strumming with that. So kind of like, back into Riff A, regular Riff A, then into C1, then C2, the C riff, whatever, with the, so the 12 hammer on 14. And I think at this part there might be 1 or 2 of these thrown in there, so it's like D12 hammer on 14. Maybe not, but I think I kind of hear 1 or 2 of those, so instead of, it'd be, so C2 is pretty much going to play the song out, and then at the very end here we have a, so a 13, and an open. So yeah, that's about it. Hamburger train.